Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to episode number 140 of Let's Go Racing. Tyler Jones, Dominic Hunnigan here with you. David Starr out this week. We got plenty to discuss here on today's show as we'll look back at the weekend that was from Bristol. Denny Hamlin gets it done and gets his first win of the regular season. We'll recap that, get some thoughts and analysis on that race. We'll also look ahead to this weekend as the NASCAR Cup Series heads to Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas, the U.S. headquarters for F1. An exciting race the last few seasons. We'll see how this race fares. We'll have a preview of that. Also catch up to speed on the latest headlines going on around the sport. And we'll have our mailbag segment coming up at the end of the show as well. Dominic, always good to see you, my friend. And you are off to the racetrack. You were off the racetrack the last several weeks, and now some time to have some R&R. Now I'm off back to the racetrack here this week in COTA. So we're doing what we can to cover the sport as much as possible here.
I think between you, me, and David, when you actually sit down and map out the entire schedule, it seems like we hit virtually every race weekend at some point. I can't make it, you make it. And that rare occasion we get all three of us.
Except last week.
Exactly. Yeah. And that rare occasion we get all three of us at the racetrack. That doesn't happen often, as I think, as we would like. But when it does, it's pretty cool. But one of those races, Tyler, you've made it look a lot of fun over the years. Just the fan experience sounds awesome. And TV does a good job there with Circuit of the Americas. That is on my short list of races to make someday.
So here is maybe my favorite thing about Circuit of the Americas. Which I mentioned I'll be at this weekend and everything. We all know about the tower, right? That overlooks the track. You see it in all the images and everything. And what they do is you can go up in the tower. It's like 10 or 20 bucks, something like that. And they serve champagne. And so you can go up there, watch the race, have an overlooking view of the whole track, and sip on some champagne. So although we are not F1, we are NASCAR. Gladly that, we're a NASCAR show and not an F1 show. Verstappen's going to win the next race. I can tell you that right now. Yes. It's about as bougie as this sport will get. Is just a little champagne in NASCAR.
Sport's a beer drinking sport, as we know, but Champagne F1 headquarters, it seems kind of fitting that if there's a place they're going to do it, it's going to be in Austin, Texas.
Yes, and Austin, to give a little perspective, Dom, as somebody that's lived in Texas now 2 years, Austin, it's so unique because, they want to give this vibe that they're this country city, but they want to be bougie at the same time, too. I'm like, pick a lane. What are you going to be, Austin? And the same goes for this weekend at COTA, too.
Well, and I remember, too, being in that airport a couple of years ago. I think there's shirts, and it might even be on billboards outside of the airport. Keep Austin weird. Kind of that whole theme, pick a lane here, right?
Right. Are you bougie? Are you weird? Are you country? What is it? Are you a little bit of everything?
The answer is yes.
The answer is yes. Yeah, exactly. So should be a fun time. I'll be there. David will be there. I got some exciting stuff that we're working with Intricity. So be on the lookout for that this weekend there from Circuit of the Americas there in Austin, or as David says, Circus of the Americas.
It's a circus over the weekend, right, Tal? You've been there a few times.
It is a bit of a circus. That is one of my favorite tracks, though. It might even be my favorite track, actually. So it should be a great time. Dominic, let's start with what we saw at Bristol this weekend. Denny Hamlin gets it done. The story of this race was the tires, and it really depends on who you asked as far as what they thought of the tires. We heard people say they loved it, they hated it. For the people that matter the most, the fans, Dominic, I think they loved it for the most part.
Well, we don't really talk about it on this show either, but I think it's worth noting, and this thing gets tens of thousands of people to interact. The Jeff Gluck X Twitter poll, whatever you want to call it, was it a good race? 88% of respondents said it was a good race. And I believe that was one of the highest rated races since he's been doing that poll for 10 years. And I know Twitter may not be, or X or social media may not be the best is in a measuring stick of
Twitter is not reality.
is not reality. However, when you have tens of thousands of people coming out to say, and they give their voice, and the voice we are hearing, it is pretty cool to see that. It seemed like a lot of the fans really like this because drivers had to adjust. And this isn't something we've seen in a while. I don't know if you felt this way, Tyler, but early on, the race had these 2008 Indianapolis Brickyard 400 vibes where, oh no, are we going to have a
Oh,
tire?
everybody was nervous.
We were nervous. We were nervous. Tires popping and lasting 50, 60 laps. And when we're used to seeing these tires go 150 plus laps, hey, drivers wanted a softer tire. Goodyear delivered on that promise, maybe a little too much of a softer compound. But I think it showed that these guys, time and time again, Tyler, they are professional athletes. They are used to pressure situations and they have to adjust. And we saw that. And I think that showed with the final results too, with looking at the top five. They're all seasoned, they're pros, they're veterans. Kind of like when we would look at the Atlanta races before Atlanta got repaved, who would be in the top 10? But you're veterans, these guys that know how to manage the tires. And that came into play today. I think Brad Keselowski had even said too, Tyler, who finished third, that this was the first time he had run a Bristol race where he did not feel worn out.
Yeah, it was interesting hearing that from Brad. And I would think, Dom, and you may disagree on this, that what we sold this week of the tire thing, whatever you want to call it, debacle, excitement, whatever it is, that's probably a one-off situation. I highly doubt Goodyear brings that tire back, race there again later on this year, or some of these other short tracks. Like, I don't think Goodyear is necessarily proud of that. I think that they would like to avoid that situation.
Well, I think to even one up that, take that a little further, I think if they did bring these tires back, and let's say they ran Bristol again in a doubleheader this upcoming weekend, we would see tire management be a lot better because we know race car drivers can adapt. Dale Earnhardt Jr. said that too, I believe, on his podcast or one of his platforms, that drivers would adapt in a situation like this. Race car drivers are quick learners, and a situation like that, you can tell there was learning even going on during the race. People are always asking race car drivers, what did you learn? What did you learn? They are students of the sport. They are students of their craft. They are always learning. Maybe they don't bring that tire back. Maybe there's a little bit of an adjustment at Martinsville or the next Bristol race, but we won't see that again. That was a very unique situation this past Sunday, and it was very entertaining.
The other comparisons for this was obviously this was the first race in several years that the spring event at Bristol was not on dirt, bringing back the concrete. Um, I'm glad they did the dirt experiment, that we got to see what it was like. NASCAR Cup cars, next gen cars on dirt. But Dom, I think they made the right call going back to concrete. I know we already get the concrete in the night race, which that's an iconic race. But if we're going to race Bristol, we need to race Bristol right. I think this ultimately was the right decision.
I can't say I disagree with you on that. I think the dirt race is great. And you hear Christopher Bell's thoughts on it prior to the race weekend. Hey, what do you think about dirt racing? We need to have more dirt races on the schedule. And of course, a dirt guy's going to say that, but there are time and places for dirt. I don't think he's
Bristol
off
was
to
not
it.
the right idea for dirt. Like,
But
I want to go, if we go dirt racing again in Cup, it needs to be a real dirt track.
spoken the words right out of my mouth. You need to go to a track that already has the facility set up for it. Like, why aren't we going to an Eldora or some other place? Maybe Knoxville. We ran the trucks there a couple of
Knoxville.
years ago. There's a couple of places that come to mind with that, but great idea and concept. Again, I applaud NASCAR. We've talked about on the show how NASCAR is not afraid to go out of the box, bend Kennedy, and try new things. And they did try something new here with this Bristol dirt thing. And I got to imagine too, Tyler, that's got to be very expensive for SMI to keep hauling dirt piles back and forth and back and forth. And they were trying to make that worthwhile too by having and hosting different events leading up to that NASCAR race weekend over the past few years. So you got to imagine that cost too to be able to do that isn't cheap.
Yeah, attendance wasn't much different comparing the dirt race to the concrete. I do wonder, as we're seeing less and less tracks get two dates, Dom, um, what Bristol's future is of hosting two dates down the road, especially with Nashville down the road having a very successful race and now being an SMI track. Um, if they're going to have two Bristol races, I like having two concrete races, but I don't know honestly how much longer Bristol holds on to two races.
You got to keep the night race, but like NASCAR, we've seen Speedway Motorsports not afraid to shake it up, like what they've done with North Wilkesboro, or even what they did, what would be considered progressive and even radical in the 90s, Tyler, when they removed North Wilkesboro and they removed Rockingham from the schedule to make way for Texas Motor Speedway and have a second date and add Las Vegas Motor Speedway to the schedule. So we know it's a matter of time with this Nashville thing, probably by the end of the decade we'll see Nashville back on the schedule. But I got to imagine you keep the night race because of the iconicness
Right.
of it, the prestige, that being a major race, I would even argue a crown jewel race, a top five NASCAR sought after
Yes.
race.
Yeah, I think you have the right idea. The night race is going to stay on the schedule, but this spring race will eventually turn into something else. Whether it's North Wilkesboro on the regular season schedule, Nashville Fairgrounds, something different. Like it's kind of Dom. I hate to say it, kind of like just a placeholder for now.
It might be. And I think, too, when you look at the last 10 years, let's exclude the dirt races from it because even the dirt races got affected by the weather. And I think the 2021 race got moved to a Monday. But that spring Bristol race has just been notorious and horrible for having races that are we even going to get the full race in? Are we going to see a Sunday race? Because we've seen that race get pushed to a Monday a couple of times. We've seen that race go late into a Sunday night and just ruin what looks like promising racing and promising race weekends. And of course, NASCAR is going to try their best to get the race in, but it isn't always on NASCAR schedule. It's on Mother Nature's schedule.
Let's talk Denny Hamlin now. Denny gets the win. Really just kind of controlled the race in the second half. Best car. He looked really good. Just held his own up there. We saw what Denny did winning the Clash, and he's run consistently up front. We've talked about it on this show previously. The Toyotas and Fords kind of got off to a slow start with how well Chevy dominated. But now we're seeing the Toyotas start to catch up. And Denny Hamlin is making his case known. Like he's not going anywhere, that he's going to contend for this championship. I was impressed with Denny this week.
Denny ran really, really well, conserved his tires super good, like a veteran driver would. Again, Hamlin, Truex, Keselowski, Bowman, we saw these guys, these veterans conserve their tires. But back to Denny Hamlin and his 52nd career win. And Tyler, we talk about it too on the stat side of things. He has said he wants to get to 60 wins. Now, I don't know if that's going to be doable this season. No driver in this next gen era has won more than 5 races per year. But Hamlin could easily knock off 4 or 5 victories throughout the year and pass Lee Petty, pass Rusty Wallace on this wins list and trek towards that top 10. 60 wins is doable in his career. Denny Hamlin looking like a title contender as always, but of course we have 32 or 31 more races to go. Still a long season, but Denny Hamlin is looking very strong very early. And we know how momentum is very important in the sport.
Yeah, and I think about this too, Dom. Like Denny's racing specifically well on short tracks. We know that he's one of the best, if not the, best restrictor plate, or what do we call them now? Drafting track drivers.
Drafting tracks.
Um, if they can kind of catch up on their mile-and-a-half program, which I don't think they're too far behind, then they're going to be in really good shape.
Might have to lean a little bit there on 2311 and Tyler Reddick and Bubba Wallace because it seems like their program has had it figured out on those mile-and-a-half tracks. But yeah, Hamlin is always the all-around threat. Now, where he needs to work on, and we have seen some flashes of brilliance, but he's only gotten one win on these types of road, on these kind of tracks, or the road courses and the street courses. One win to his name, and that was in 2016. So I'd be curious to see how he runs this weekend at Dakota. Wouldn't be surprised with the top 10 finish, but man, Denny Hamlin stepping up on those road courses. We know there's 7 of them on the schedule. You kind of have to run good at them too if you want to pick up more stage points and some more playoff points too. That helps pad through the playoffs.
He does luck out that there's only one road course in the playoff, the way the schedule winds up the way it is, which is a bit surprising when you have 7 road courses, only one in the playoff. Maybe that changes down the road, but something to think about there. Watch out for Denny Hamlin. I got to shout out Ty Gibbs. I know he's a bit controversial. He could be a bit of a bonehead sometimes. But Ty Gibbs really coming into his own. We mentioned the Clash that Denny won. He ran really well there. this past week. Had a chance to win. Ultimately went to Denny Hamlin. But we've seen him run up front. He's leading laps. He's taking a big step. I think of the next batch of first-time winners, Ty Gibbs has got to be the next guy in line here.
Certainly. He's led more than a few hundred laps already in the Cup Series. I know that's a skewed stat. He led a lot of that at Bristol, but he's off to the best start of his young Cup Series career. 4 top 10 finishes in the first 5 races and third in points, clean first 2 stages at Bristol. Ty Gibbs, it's more, Tyler, not a matter of if, but a matter of when he's going to pick up that first one. We were talking, you and I, before the season started. I'm sure a lot of the fans that listen in would agree with this. Ty Gibbs was in for some sort of breakout year this year, with at least one victory, going to make the playoffs, looking very, very promising early on. That Joe Gibbs Racing camp looks very strong. And I have to add to that too, Tyler, with the whole Bristol run, it looked there for a while like we were looking at our 1, 2, 3, 4 Joe Gibbs Racing finish. And that would have been the first time in a couple of years that we have an organization finish 1, 2, 3, 4. Hasn't happened a lot in NASCAR history, but that entire Gibbs organization is looking really, really good for not quite a fast start in those first couple of races.
So we're 5 races in, correct?
Yes.
5 different winners.
5 different winners
in 2024. And to think too, Dom, like based on how strong Chevy looked out of the gates, I am surprised that we've seen 5 different winners in the first 5 races. That credit where credit's due, especially Toyota for catching up in the last couple of weeks after how good Chevy looked.
No, definitely. And in this 16 driver playoff era, if you will, since it began in 2014, Tyler, we've had it happen where 5 times the opening 5 races are won by 5 different drivers. And we've had that in 2 of the next gen era seasons out of 3, but this being one of them. And I did talk with Christopher Bell after he won Phoenix. Hey, do you think you need a second win? Do you think you're going to need to have another win in the bag to feel safe? And he goes, no, I really don't think so. I think we're not going to have the parity that we have seen over the last couple of years. Tyler, we had 17 winners in 2022. And I know that was the next gen era first year, kind of figuring all of that out too, but we were not that far off last year as well. By the time the playoffs rolled around, we were sitting at 13 winners, 14 overall if you count SVG's win at the Chicago Street Course. I'm not saying we're going to get 16 winners, but I'm not saying it's not possible either. We do still have some very strong cars in that Chevy camp, in the Ford camp, in the Toyota camp. All 3 manufacturers have great, great drivers who have yet to win a race. The one that comes to mind to me, Tyler, I don't think we'll see it this weekend because another road course kind of Achilles heel, if you will, but Brad Keselowski and RFK Racing are onto something. It's been a tale of 2 seasons. He's gone 3 years now almost without a victory, but you got to feel like that 6 team's knocking on a win. Chris Buescher in the 17 team. You have Ryan Blaney, we're 5 races in, our defending champions winless. So there would be potential 8 winners right there. Truex and Gibbs would take us to 10. You have the rest of the Hendrick camp that's very capable of winning. There's already 13 drivers there that could win before the regular season's over.
Yeah. Now, as far as the manufacturers go, Chevy has looked strong. Toyota's looked better the last couple of weeks. How far behind do you think Ford is to Chevy and Toyota? Ford's still looking for their first win of 2024.
Yeah, on paper, it looks like Ford is just struggling right now, but they've been fast in qualifying. We've seen Joey Logano run really well. Ryan Blaney has had some speed, and the RFK guys are looking really, really good too. It's just a matter of timing and how these races fall and play
Stuart
out.
Haas is also coming together. They have been struggling so much the last couple of years. Josh Berry ran well this past week. We've seen Noah Gragson have some good runs here. Stuart Haas has looked better than I think most of us expected.
I think so. I think this is definitely an improvement. Tony Stewart's pep talk, I think, at the beginning of the year definitely motivated the people behind the scenes and the people behind the wheel at those organizations in their vehicles, because they've already matched top 10 totals outside of Kevin Harvick from last year, which is amazing. Noah Gragson is running great. Josh Berry, Chase Briscoe. It seems like Ryan Preece is showing some flashes of brilliance too, even with their big point penalties and how that has set them back. The fact that Gragson has shown top 10 speed week in and week out. Tyler, I'm going to throw myself under the bus here. I did some preseason championship numbers, and okay, how many top tens, top fives are these guys going to get? I had Noah Gragson with three top 10 finishes in the entire 2024 season. He's already matched that in the first five races of the year. I got to eat my own words on that.
Yeah, Noah Gregson's done a really good job. I've been impressed with what he's done so far. And we mentioned Ty Gibbs being the first time winners. Noah Gregson might be coming too. We'll
Josh
see.
Berry.
Josh Berry as well. I like what I've seen from Josh Berry too.
And that was not a fluke too of how well he qualified at Bristol. When I saw he qualified second, then he's going to be up there. You get those first two stages done, you're running top 10, which he was. You know you're going to be really fast at Bristol. And he did very good conserving the tires for again being this rookie driver. This is a guy that cut his teeth running a lot of short tracks.
I think with Josh Berry too, Dom, you're going to see him run very well at short tracks. That's his bread and butter. That's what he came up in. Last year, he had a very good run in the 48 car at Richmond. There, I think he's going to perform very, very well. It's the other stuff that I wonder: the mile and a halves, the road courses, the drafting tracks, where I think the work is really going to have to go in for Josh Berry.
Definitely. There's going to be a big learning curve. And Chase Briscoe being the veteran and having to step up into that senior role as a driver. Leon Chase Briscoe, he's run really well at a lot of those intermediate tracks. He's shown some speed. So definitely some lessons to be learned there. And Ryan Preece has definitely been on the circuit a while. Gregson and Barry, of course, having their success together as teammates at Junior Motorsports in the Xfinity Series. You got to figure that experience plays in, but it's going to be a steep learning curve too at some of these non-short tracks and non-restricted plate tracks or drafting tracks for Josh Berry.
Yes. Let's look ahead to this weekend. Circuit of the Americas, Austin, Texas. Dom, we have not been at this track very much. I believe this is only going to be the fourth year that we've been there in Austin, and I've been there for two of them. We mentioned terrific host. I hope this stays on the schedule for a long time because they do a great job. And, I know some people might not like this in my neck of the woods, but, this took a date away from Texas. And given the choice, I'd rather go to Coda once and Texas once than Texas twice. Based on just how great this race has been, I think I like it more than the Texas race myself. But you look at what we're seeing, the on-track product, the last couple of seasons, this race has been wild. We all know about that hill at turn one, just how crazy that can be of those guys just trying to even make the turn. But then everything else from there, this race gets wild. We've seen some crazy finishes, some guys get aggressive here. And sometimes that's what it's going to take to potentially win this race is maybe being a little overly aggressive, not afraid to make a power move of some sorts.
Circuit of the Americas has delivered, or should we say the Circus of the Americas, Tyler, because that first year, I don't think you were at the race, the 2021 race where he got rain short.
Wasn't that one, the rain shortened race,
Yeah,
right?
they had the big crash on the backstretch with Ryan Preece, Cole Custer, Martin Truex Jr., all that. So I don't really feel like that race was a proving ground of some sorts to really show what this race could showcase. And I felt like it needed another chance. I wasn't completely sold on it, but at the same time, you can't judge a race based off of a rain thing. But man, 2022 delivered with Alex Bowman, AJ Allmendinger, Ross Chastain with that last lap, last couple of laps, and how that all played out. And then you look last year with Tyler Reddick and all the restarts and the F1 guys coming over. This race has sold me, Tyler. I think it would be a great, great opportunity, a great venue for any fan to go see a race there. And just anywhere seems like there would not be a bad seat in the house because you're going to get some good passes. You're going to get some great views along some of the straights. That Champagne thing sounds pretty nice, but Circuit of the Americas, Tyler, the last 2 years, and you being there, you can attest to it. The energy you could feel it watching on TV. I'm sure it was even better in person.
Yeah, and as far as we'll pick this later, but coming to mind, Dom, like it's not just being a good road course racer, it's being an aggressive road course racer. The Ross Chastains, the Tyler Reddicks, the Kyle Larsons, the Joey Logano's of the world, Ty Gibbs, even. Like that to me is what we talk about guys hurting themselves, being overly aggressive here. I think at this track, like AJ Allmendinger, for example, a couple years ago, um, I think it was an Xfinity race or something where he moved Ross Chastain out of the way, made a move to get this done. Like he's another name. I know that he's in this weekend. Like it's not good enough here to just be a good road course racer. You got to be aggressive.
Absolutely. And that's why you look at some of these guys that are excellent, excellent race car drivers, but the road courses just haven't been their cup of tea. Keselowski, Logano, Hamlin, they're not that aggressive on the road courses. Maybe you could argue Hamlin a little bit, but you're not going to see a lot of those guys up front, in my opinion. We'll see if I'm eating those words next week. But the guys you've mentioned, Ross Chastain, Alex Bowman, AJ Allmendinger, Kyle Busch, Ty Gibbs, a lot of these guys that have a lot of this road course racing experience and racing at the front, that's a lot different. And you're going to need to be a lot aggressive and have that aggressiveness to you if you want to have a shot to win on Sunday.
Yeah, and we'll talk about this guy more in our picks, but I'm excited to see SVG because this is a guy that's not afraid to be aggressive either. He is obviously won last year at the Chicago Street Course and now comes to an FIA graded track. This is going to be as good of a racetrack SVG's ever raced on his entire career in motorsports. I think SVG is immediately out of the gates going to come in and be a contender to win again. I made the mistake in his debut of saying that he had no chance, that there was no way that anybody could walk in their first Cup start and win the race. And our buddy Jonathan Feld was telling me otherwise, and I had to eat crow on that. I'm very tempted just to cover my ass and pick SVG in our pick segment because SVG has never not won a Cup race where I've been in attendance now.
Hey, there you go. So you're telling me he's batting 1,000?
Yes. Yes, he is. But SVG, like this to me, Dom, like, I mean, if you guys have seen the footage of him running the Baja 1000, like this is like a mini version of that. We talk about the hill and all that, like that's nothing compared to the stuff SVG does.
SVG is going to be a force to be reckoned with this weekend. His first two starts, a first at the Chicago Street Course, a 10th at the Indianapolis Road Course. I'm going to be shocked, Tyler, if he's not top 10 in this race, 3 for 3 in his first three starts.
Yeah. I do have some concerns about colleague of him of what they could potentially do because that team's got some problems, but with Trackhouse behind them, they should be in good shape. So with that, we'll move on. We'll pick this race coming up later, but before we do anything else, let's catch up on the headlines of the sport with our news and notes. Dom, where do we want to start?
So we have a lot of Circuit of the America news to get to, but before we do get to that, we would be remiss if we didn't mention more of the network news and the detailings of that. So heading on.
Coverage you can count on.
Oh, absolutely. Coverage you can count on. Well, we know that NASCAR and broadcasting partners and personnel are always moving pieces, and that's certainly the case here coming into this season and into next year with the NBC team. So we start there with Dale Earnhardt Jr. Last time we were here, Tyler, we didn't even know about the whole contract situation. Dale Earnhardt Jr. will not be returning to NBC Sports in 2025, and likely this year as well, as he is vacating the broadcast booth for a deal with Turner Sports and Warner Brothers. In addition to that, the play-by-play announcer, Rick Allen,
And he's also going to Amazon as well.
And Amazon too, yes. Rick Allen will be getting some sort of demotion, if you want to call it that, at the conclusion of the NBC Olympics coverage. Lee Diffie, who has been covering NASCAR and all forms of motorsports, will be the new play-by-play announcer for NBC as they head into their playoffs. And that one, Tyler, we've seen Lee Diffie do before with some Cup races at Watkins Glen, so it's not like he's a complete stranger walking into this situation, but certainly some moves. And from what fans remember with the NBC booth in November, it's certainly going to look a lot different later this year and next year.
Yeah, and there could be more changes coming. This is just what we know right now. No Rick Allen, no Dale Earnhardt Jr. We'll see what else is going on. But I'll start with the Dale Jr. side of things. We heard from Kenny Wallace. He was kind of talking about it, and he said that from what he had been told, that Junior kind of fell out of love with NBC, that he wasn't kind of treated like the golden child anymore of sorts, and that relationship had kind of soured. And you go to TNT and Amazon, and Dom, like you and I have seen behind the scenes of the business, like people on air, it only has to do like your talent is only about 15% of the job. 85% is your work ethic and your relationships and all that. And I think like as far as keeping Dale happy and where he has that love there, it was never going to be the same again at NBC. I think him going to TNT and Amazon, they're excited to have him. I would assume they're paying him more money and he's doing less work. I would guess this more has to do with the stuff behind the scenes than anything else. And we might not even ever know the full story of this move.
Certainly. Well, he's not here, so I will take the place of David Starr on this one. Tyler, you know what that's called? That's called leverage. Dale Earnhardt Jr.
Yes.
had some leverage with that deal. So knowing that the network contracts are coming up in this new TV package deal with the Cup Series and Xfinity Series, he pretty much could write the script however he wanted, knowing these deals were coming up, knowing his contract was up. He was in a very, very, very good position. No matter where he was going to go, he definitely had a lot, again, to quote David, a lot of leverage on where he could have gone. And you got to imagine behind the scenes, they're probably doing what they can to make him happy. And of course, nobody's invincible. Anybody's replaceable, including the president. Anybody can take a job. But you're going to want Dale Earnhardt Jr. part of your broadcast, especially if you're stepping back into the sport. You have new partners coming in. You have instant credibility with a two-time Daytona 500 champion.
Well, and we talked the money situation. Dom, nobody in media, nobody, not ESPN, not Fox, not CBS, NBC, Netflix has more money than Amazon. Amazon has way more cash than anyone else, and it's not even close. And, pure speculation here. NBC could have just straight up gotten outbid. It could have been a point where they're like, man, we can't compete with the money that Amazon is throwing Dale Jr.'s direction. We don't know the dollar amount yet, but it's got to be very high.
Gotta imagine Tyler would a ballpark of, I don't know, 20 million a season because they don't even have the full package. Is that something that would even be, is that a starting point? Is that too
I
low,
could
too
see
high?
20 million combined between his
Okay.
work with Amazon and TNT. Um, that's certainly possible. Like Al Michaels, for example, is getting between like 15 and 16 million dollars to call Thursday Night Football. And analysts always make more money than play-by-play guys. But yeah, I think it's a business decision. As far as NBC goes, that's not the only changes though.
No, especially with Rick Allen taking that demotion, if you will, and Lee Diffie taking the reins of the play-by-play once the Olympic coverage is done and NASCAR resumes after that 2 week break. Tyler, you can put us in those shoes. You have definitely done a lot of on-air work, more than all three of us combined. So what is Rick Allen feeling? I mean, you're in a spot where you've called these races, you kind of get into your routine, you've done your schedule. What is Rick Allen thinking? Because certainly what he says publicly might differ from what he's thinking privately in those conversations he's having with his family and how he really feels. How is Rick Allen really feeling about a situation like this?
Well, getting demoted, that always sucks. I mean, we're gonna be real. I can tell you this right now. Rick Allen wants to be calling NASCAR Cup Series races. He does. But then I think if you're Rick Allen, you have to know that everything's going to be okay because of the seats that are opening next year. You think about it, you got the Xfinity package on the CW, you got the Cup package on Prime, Cup package on TNT. We don't know how much longer Mike Joy is going to go, and obviously he used to work for Fox and Speed Channel, has a previous relationship with those folks, and that's where he got his start. Rick Allen's going to be okay. I don't know what his future holds. It's not going to be with NBC because they're losing the Xfinity Series next year, so there's just no spot for Rick Allen next year at NBC. But Rick Allen is too good, and there's too many job openings for Rick Allen not to be calling NASCAR races next season. So I think Rick Allen is ultimately going to be okay when this all said and done. You know, one of those spots, I don't know which one it is, but I would be very surprised if we don't hear Rick Allen working for one of those networks calling NASCAR races on a major network next year.
He might have more leverage, kind of like Dale Earnhardt Jr. than we think.
He might already have a deal in place. That actually might be, and this again, speculation. The reason why he might be getting demoted, he might have said, already informed them, I'm leaving when my contract's up. And this might be a way to spite him or something like, fine, we're taking you off cup races. We're putting Lee Diffie in. That could be what's happening here. As far as Lee Diffie goes, I like Lee Diffie. Lee's a great guy. I've interviewed him before and we've talked several times. Lee, I'll say this. I am surprised that an Aussie is going to be the lead NASCAR voice for a major network, but I don't hate it at all. Lee is very talented. He's very genuine. He's passionate about it. He knows motorsports through and through. I would say, folks, give Lee a chance. Don't be ignorant about it. If you give Lee a chance, I think you're going to like what he brings to the table. I think he does an incredible job. Like, we've seen him call like track and field stuff too. I think he's one of the best play-by-play guys in all of sports. I like Rick Allen too, but if Rick Allen was going to get replaced by anybody, I'm excited about Lee Diffie here, Dom.
They wouldn't put him there if they didn't believe in him or didn't think he could do the job. That's the other thing to put there too.
Yeah, yeah. What's kind of your thoughts on Lee Diffie here?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't know too much about him. I remember him calling some of the races, I believe, maybe Watkins Glen, maybe a Michigan race a few years back.
He's been the voice of IndyCar for a long time. Used to do F1 too.
So he's got this. I think it's one of those things, like you said, you have to go in with an open mind. You can't just shut it down and say, oh, it's not going to be a good fit. We need to see it first. We need to really weigh it out. Like we did this COTA race. Like we've seen the Bristol race, the Coliseum, all these things NASCAR has tried. The broadcast partners are trying something here, and they have to go with what's going to best suit their company. And they feel this is the best move for that opportunity at this point in time. We need to see how it plays out.
One more TV note I'll bring up here, Dom, just real quick. Ratings for NASCAR, very good to start the season. I think every race except the Daytona 500, which was on a Monday, is up significantly year over year. 4 million plus for every race so far this year. Fox is going to be very happy. NASCAR is going to be very happy. And I would point to, Dom, what NASCAR did when they directly invested in that Netflix show. They put their money out there. That was paid for by NASCAR to do that show, and it got rave reviews, and I think that created some momentum for them to begin this year and to attract new audience and everything. We're seeing in this day and age, like, sponsors are doing less activations. They're promoting the drivers less and less, just the way the economy's gone and the world's changed. And NASCAR having to dip into their own pockets to promote the sport a bit. And I think they're seeing a return on investment here.
Oh, certainly. It's one of those like immediately return on investments. Tyler, I got to tell you, I've always said it on the show. I'm from New Mexico. There's not a lot of motorsports people here, but it's been pretty cool to hear people even here locally saying, hey, well, man, what'd you think of that Bristol race, the tire wear? Or, man, I saw the race in Vegas. That looked fun. Or that Phoenix race looked amazing. And the Daytona 500 was awesome. And just all these different things week over week. People I would have thought I would never hear talking about motorsports. So that tells you that it's working on a local level. You got to imagine it's like that nationwide and reaching beyond the United States as well.
Yeah, and I think timing is so important. Uh it's kind of wearing off the F1 side of things. Like, they peaked a bit, now it's starting to come back downhill a bit. With as much as Verstappen's been dominating. And I think that crowd is looking for something different. NASCAR could be that thing they're looking for.
NASCAR would be that avenue. And hey, this weekend, if you've caught this podcast and you've never watched a NASCAR race, but you're an F1 guy or gal, they're racing at an F1 track this weekend.
And it's going to be a better race than what
It's
F1
going to be a better race,
on.
no doubt about it.
I have nothing against F1 either. I enjoy watching F1, but I can tell you this right now, NASCAR is going to put on a much better product on that track than what F1 will in October. I can guarantee that right now.
Leaders not going to be 20 seconds ahead either, by the way.
No, definitely not. Tom, what else we got?
Speaking of Circuit of the Americas, we can't move on before we at least highlight some of the entry list and what's going on with that. Tyler, 39 entries. So this is the largest Cup field since the Daytona 500. The 500 had 42 entries. Only 40 make every race, 36 chartered vehicles, 4 open vehicles. We have 3 of those this week, but included is that colleague all-star car, Shane Van Gisbergen, returning to the Cup Series in his first start this year, running that 16 car. Alongside him, colleague racing's second car entry in 2024 with AJ Allmendinger, winner at the Roval last year, road course aces in those 13
Third car
16
entry.
cars. Yes.
Third car.
Oh, third car, excuse me. Third car, yes, because of Daniel Hemrick. The 50 car, 2311, hosting a third car there with Kamui Kobayashi. He ran the Indianapolis road course race last year for the team in the 67 car. That's been rebranded to the 50. And Timmy Hill running the number 66, a familiar face and a familiar team with MBM Motorsports, Carl Long's organization. This will be their first Cup start since Talladega 2022 with JJ Haley. They did run this race in 2022 with Boris Said. So those are the four entries. Tyler, I got to ask you right out of the gate. You look at those four. Who is the highest finisher of the four not usual suspects in the Cup Series this weekend?
Man, I'm very excited about SVG. I'm just going to go ahead and say it as we do our picks here. I'm calling it for SVG this week. I think SVG gets it done, gets into victory lane for the second time in his career. This track's like right up his alley, maybe even more so than the street race of, all the hills and just how aggressive this is. They, in Australia, they called him the Kyle Busch of supercar racing. And if he runs like Kyle Busch, he's going to be running pretty good.
I can't say I disagree with you. I would say it's a toss-up between one of those two collie cars. Those four entries we just talked about, Allmendinger, SVG, one of those two would likely be the highest finisher of those four. I think Kobayashi, he can keep a clean race going, unlike last time. We could see him with a top 15 finish. And Timmy Hill of NBA Motorsports, a lot of unknowns. I know the next gen car provides a lot of parity, but a team that hasn't run in almost 2 years, you got to imagine just getting to the finish line and even a lead lap finish would be a win for that team.
I'll say this. I wish he was running this weekend. He ran this race last year and showed some flashes. I want to see this guy get another chance in a Cup car. We need Jordan Taylor back.
Yes, he qualified fourth in lieu of Chase Elliott's injury, and he ran that 9 car. I think he even collected stage points. Ran
Yes.
super well. One of those other guys we could have been talking about a first-time win on a road course. Man, Jordan Taylor would have been a great entry.
Yeah. I feel like he keeps getting the short end of the stick. Like we haven't seen him in a Cup car lately. He was the odd man out on the Le Mans, the Project 91, or the Project 91, not Project 91. The I can't even remember now.
Oh, Garage 56.
Garage 56, thank you. He ended up being the driving coach and was the substitute driver. Like, give Jordan Taylor a shot. I mean, I want to see him get more seat time, potentially speaking.
Sure.
What's your pick this week?
This week, so had we had the show last week, I picked him for Bristol. He looked so good. Didn't win, swept the stages. I think Ty Gibbs gets it done this weekend, Tyler. I think Ty Gibbs gets that first win. We know how great he is on the road courses. You got to be aggressive. Oh yeah, that's right. Ty Gibbs is aggressive. He pisses off a lot of people on the track, but that's what you need behind the wheel. You need an aggressive driver who's not afraid to take some chances. Ty Gibbs gets win number one this weekend.
All right, I like it. Win numero uno for Ty Gibbs there. Anything else in the news and notes from?
So the last thing to cover here, of course, we got to cover our odds and looking at the 2024 Echo Park Automotive Grand Prix at Circus of the Americas. Who do you think's the odds-on favorite, Tyler?
Odds-on favorite here. I'm going to go Ross Chastain.
That is a great pick. We're going off two sports books here. We're comparing side by side with DraftKings and BetMGM. Not sponsors of the show, by the way, but looking at the two sports books, Tyler Reddick is your odds-on favorite at about 4.5 or 5 to 1.
Okay. Defending race winner, yeah.
Defending race winner. Ross Chastain, the 2022 race winner, sitting at 10 to 1. The original.
So I was close.
You were close. Chase Elliott's sitting at about 8 to 1. The inaugural winner. your guy, Shane Van Gisbergen, about third place, thirds on the favorites list at 9-1. Some of the books have him about 14-1. William Byron, who's shocked everybody with that Watkins Glen win, sitting about 10-1. Christopher Bell, another 10-1 odds. Martin Truex 13-1. Ty Gibbs, my pick at 14-1. Tyler. AJ Allmendinger at 15-1. And just some select guys throughout the field. Michael McDowell, potentially value pick at 17-1. Chris Buescher, now another value pick at 25-1. Denny Hamlin 22-1. Austin Cindric, who ran well at this race in 2021, sitting at 28-1. Kobayashi at 40-1. And kind of a little shocker here, but maybe not. They're not known for their road course prowess. Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, both sitting at 55-1.
Blaney is a very good road course racer.
Yeah, 55-1. I don't know if I agree with those odds.
Yeah, the value bet there.
It made 25-1, but not 55-1.
Yeah, I can see that. All right, before we go, our mailbag segment, we asked you to submit questions to us. Email davidstarrpodcast@gmail.com, facebook.com/starrpodcast, X @starrpodcast. You can send us your questions there each and every week. And our first question in the mailbag this week comes from Woody. Great name. Woody wants to know,
Toy Story.
I know David doesn't drink, but what is Dominic and Tyler's favorite beer? Dominic, you get us started here.
Okay, I'll get it started, man. So I really enjoy like the wheat ales. So like a nice Blue Moon, kind of like a mixer with a little bit of orange juice or even a fresh peeled orange. Man, that goes down smooth. I can have that with dinner. And you guys know me, I don't really drink that often, but that's my preferred beer of choice. And Tyler, man, they have the non-alcoholic brew too, which is kind of my speed. So I've been enjoying that with a little bit of orange juice from time to time. But I don't drink often, but when I do, it would be that. How about you?
Real quick before I answer this question, I know you don't drink often, but if you do, you're more a beer guy, aren't you?
More a beer guy. Yeah, the hard alcohol just I don't know. I've tried some different stuff and just hasn't really agreed with me.
Okay. So you mentioned wheat beer. I love me a Boulevard wheat, based in Kansas City. A little harder to find here in Dallas, but that's probably my favorite beer of some of the others that come to mind. I've been drinking a lot of Troy Aikman's beer 8 as of late, which is it's not bad for you. It's all natural, and Troy does a really good job what he puts into it, low carb and such. So I do love 8. Also love the Ruby Grapefruit Shiner beer is also solid for me. As you can see, I'm getting a little beyond just your traditional domestics at this point. If I'm drinking domestics though, I'll take Modelo. Modelo would probably be my choice if I'm just talking traditional domestics. But Dom, I can guarantee this much: I say hell no to Bud Light. No Bud Light for me.
You know what, man? I haven't had Bud Light in a while, and it's just not my thing. But I'll take some Blue Moon.
I'll say this much too. Like this may be a hot take for some, Dom. You've had PBR, right?
Never tried it actually.
Okay, so PBR gets a bad rap. Like there's the old Jeff Foxworthy joke. What ribbon in hell did they win? Like it's very basic beer, but I love me a good PBR every now and then. Like I am never going to be too good to drink a PBR. Like I will always enjoy a good cold PBR. Sometimes you just got to sit on the patio, the backyard, enjoy a nice cold PBR. You can't go wrong with PBR. So that's a lot of beer choice. I've given out plenty of selection of folks out there of some good beer choices. I love me some beer. I could go for a cold one right now.
Yeah, and if you guys made it this far in the YouTube version, you got to comment below. Let us know what you think. What's your beer? What's your beer of choice or alcohol of choice?
Yeah. Dom, with just you and me here, let's open this up a little bit between you and I on the mailbag. You give me a question, I'll give you a question here.
Hey, that sounds good. That sounds really good. I'll tell you, there is something I've been a little curious about. And so again, relating back to knowing we've done the show a while, but those that have been along with us on the
We've
journey.
known each other over 10 years.
Yeah, Tyler and I, we've known each other a long time. And you, the listener, the viewer, you know that Tyler has had some pretty cool gigs over the years, from working in radio to national television to covering pro sports. I'm curious, man. So maybe a two-parter here, but you asked this to our guests. I'm going to flip this on you. Is of all the stuff you've covered, all the events you've covered, and I'll do it to the ones that you've done like where you've been there? Like I know you've covered a lot of sports, you've been on scenes for a lot of stuff. What are you most proud of as far as the coverage of any event, whether it be sports, non-sports, that you got to be a part of there in the flesh to help tell the story?
Um, I think it's always like the people you come across, right? Like, you know, I can say that I've covered speeches of the last three U.S. presidents.
That's pretty cool.
Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Barack Obama. I've seen all three of them. And that was a unique thing, so like the people, right? And that one too, like, doesn't matter what my political views are. It's respect for the office. Like, okay, we're in and Joe Biden, I didn't see as president. I saw him running for president. But even then, at the time, it's still like, wow, this guy was vice president of the United States, So to me, was a big deal to see all three of them at different points in time. As far as event wise, so in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be covering the Final Four for the third time, and I covered the Final Four in college. I went back last year, and that has become my favorite event that I cover. Like, I've been to major championships in golf, been to several Daytona 500s now, been NFL playoff games, a lot of different things over the years. But the Final Four, it it's not just a one day thing. It's goes over a period of days. You got the National Coaches Convention going on, and everybody in the college basketball world, from the players to the coaches to the media, everybody gets together. Like NASCAR, when we're on the road, like, we all see each other all the time, right? Like, this is the one time a year where everybody's in one place, and they usually pick a nice warm city, so it's kind of like a vacation of sorts. So for me, the Final Four, March Madness, of course, starting this week. I could not be more excited. I'm excited to get down to Phoenix here in a few weeks for that. Part of our little tease for something we'll promote here in the next week or so. Jones Goes West. We'll finish Jones Goes West in Phoenix at the Final Four.
Still recovering from that cancellation last year. I love it. I love it. Of the summer of
There was
Jones.
no cancellation. We finished strong.
Finish strong. So my other question for you would be kind of, I guess, maybe a little related to media, but a little bit of a different trajectory here. So you've worked in different markets. You've worked in Kansas City. You've worked in Omaha. You've worked in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Oklahoma, and Tulsa more specifically. So of all these markets you've ever worked in, and I might add too, all these different disciplines that you've covered, where have you been recognized the most as far as out in public, going out to the store, running your errands? What market have you been most recognized in, and how often were those interactions?
Oh, it was definitely when I lived, in the Kansas City area and in Lawrence specifically. Um, you know, and it wasn't just people that listened to me on air, but just knowing people. Um, I couldn't go anywhere out in public without running into somebody I knew. And, that was kind of the small town radio guy thing, and so uh was was really funny. I'll tell a quick story here, Dom. So I took over the morning show for a guy that had been there a long time, that was a great friend of mine, still to this day, my former boss, John Flood. And Flood was very old school in his approach. And I learned a lot from him. He was great. But me, I was a little more younger, and a little not as polished as I am now, and was more willing to kind of just throw things against the wall and try to entertain. And that was sometimes through the chagrin of my boss. And there was a gal that listened to that show every day. And I remember hearing from her just around the grapevine, like, oh yeah, I ran into so and so, and she said that she doesn't like listening to that show anymore because you're annoying. I'm like, wow, like that's rude, and then she came up to me one day when I was out at breakfast or something, and she said, "You ruined my morning show." And I'm like, "Oh, sorry, like you're still listening though, aren't you?" She's like, "Yeah, yeah, I'm still listening." And well, she was a loan officer, and like for car loans and auto loans and all that. And I was buying a new vehicle, and my one of my coworkers, she recommended I reach out to her for a loan. I said, I'm not working with her. She's been trashing my show, the work I do. Why would I sign up for her? And she's like, oh, just go see her, just see what she can do. And sure enough, she came around on me. She's like, yeah, she's like, you grew on me. I enjoy your show, and still listening every day. And she got me a great car loan, and we became since then. And she would bring me gifts and was very kind, and we're still friends to this day. So after all that, Dom, it was not what I anticipated. The ending there of how that went after a little rough start there.
That's called going full circle right there. I love it.
So it just takes a while for me to grow on people sometimes, I guess.
It's okay. It's okay, man. Well, you grew on me pretty quick for what it's worth.
Well, that's good. That's good. I'm glad that it worked out the way it did. So my question for you, Dominic, that I'm very curious of. We know you love NASCAR. Um, but if you had to cover something else, I know you've been big in the news side a lot as well over the years, doing stuff for KOB there. If if I said, Dom, you can't cover NASCAR anymore, but you can still work in the media, what would you want to do?
Man, that's an excellent question. And I've talked about this before, maybe briefly with you and some other people, but I've always thought it'd be cool to like do a year of like White House politics or like covering the House of Representatives and the Senate, more White House politics and covering the daily happenings of what's going on in Washington. And like you said, I think you said it best. It doesn't matter my political views or opinions. It's the respect for the office and the fact that this person and this administration is running the greatest country in the world. And to be able to be having a front row seat to that and seeing
And the
history.
news that day affects the whole world.
Oh, big time, big time. And I can tell you too, I think what has really sparked that for me, kind of a quick story time too, is in 2018, 2019, all coming together at the 11th hour, having the opportunity to go to the White House and cover the events of President Trump honoring the NASCAR champion from the year prior. So he honored Truex in May of 18 and then Logano in April of 19. And I had the privilege of being at both of those. And I had people telling, oh, that's awesome. Why would you go? All this stuff. Doesn't matter who it is. It's the respect of the office and the fact that's the president of the United States giving some sort of honor to our sport. That opened my eyes and just kind of getting to know some of the White House correspondents there on those two times we went. Really cool to see what they do on a daily basis. I think something like that would be cool. And then if you guys know me, you know the one thing I'm a little more passionate about motorsports. And you guys know I love motorsports and I live and breathe it, but I'm a little more passionate about music and playing in bands and doing covers and writing original music and that sort of thing. So I think commenting on that, I would say something in the music industry, like covering rock bands and doing features and Q&As and doing those kind of stories and telling the stories of music and more specifically rock and roll and like 70s, 80s, 90s era kind of music, Tyler. So politics and music would be the two I would go to if I could not cover NASCAR anymore.
Okay, that's fascinating. Uh, Dom, great stuff. Before we get out of here, I already kind of talked about what I'm doing. I'm going to Coda this weekend, and that's where I'll be. And people can follow along on my social media at Tyler Jones Live for more coverage there from Austin. But what's going on with you?
Really excited this weekend. We're going to meet up with a lot of family that we haven't seen in a long, long time on my dad's side. So gathering for I guess an anniversary of some sort. People tend to gather for either funerals or weddings. So we're actually going to gather for my grandfather's passing was 10 years ago on that side of the family, but we're going to gather and just have like a day just to share memories and have an excuse, Tyler, to not gather for a funeral or a wedding, but just to make new memories as a family. So looking forward to that with my own small family and my dad's family. That should be a lot of fun. That there's gonna be a lot of good stories shared.
Awesome. Great stuff there. Dom, we will get out of here. David will be back next week, and certainly excited to be hanging out with him in Austin this week at a Circuit of the Americas. So should be a fun time there. As always, subscribe to Let's Go Racing. New episodes out each and every week. Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you're listening to podcasts. Check us out on YouTube as well. And hit the like button. Every like helps and gets this show out to more people. And we certainly would appreciate it. Follow us on social media on X at Starr Podcast, Facebook.com/Starr Podcast. And then also you can email us, davidstarrpodcast@gmail.com. This show, part of the Studio Soapbox Network. Check out the Jones Report with yours truly. Also, the Coach Bo Knows podcast as well. And our whole lineup of shows from the Studio Soapbox Network. Check that out as well. We'll put the checker flag out on this edition of Let's Go Racing. For Dominic Callaghan, David Starr, Tom Jones, thanks so long. It's been another edition of Let's Go Racing. We'll see you next week.